Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to understand what's going on in the war in Ukraine and analyze and interpret things for you. In this video, I want to talk about why Biden has consistently slow-walked aid to Ukraine and what's going on behind that. He's self-deterred. Uh, Maybe Putin has deterred him, but I think he's also self-deterred because he has tried not to antagonize Russia, and this is the way that he functions. And I think I understand a little bit more why. I was reading a book yesterday that gave me some insight that I'm going to share with you. Before I share that with you, though, I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to poison my own well. Okay, poisoning the well is a smear tactic where an opponent introduces information about their adversaries in order to discredit them. Okay, this term derives from the ancient war tactic of poisoning an opponent's water to diminish his strength. I'm doing it to myself. I'm telling you right up front, I voted for Nikki Haley, right? I still have the yard sign in my office. I'm a lifelong Republican. I voted for Republicans in almost every election in my adult life. Now, I'm telling you that to say this is where I'm coming from, and now you can discount me, but I'm discounting myself to say I don't know that I'm right. Maybe my filters are clouding my judgment. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I see. So Biden is slow walking this aid, unnecessarily slow, and I'm trying to figure out why. And even to the point that today, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reiterated the White House's unwillingness to approve Ukraine's use. This was in the Euromaidan press, by the way. Unwillingness to approve Ukraine's use of U.S.-provided weapons in strikes against military targets in Russia, because Secretary Blinken sounded like a week ago, like, well, maybe we can't tell you what to do with them, and then that was reiterated again, and now reiterated again. So, but why? So I was reading Battlegrounds by H.R. McMaster, and something jumped out at me, and I thought, oh, wow. Now, let's talk about H.R. McMaster. He was Trump's security advisor, and you'd say, oh, well, he's Trump's advisor. Look, he's apolitical. He's not trying to be political, and in fact, what he's talking about here is not political at all. He's never voted in an election in his life. He's just all about national security. Okay, so let's look at what he had to say. He was talking about Icarus, right? And you remember the story about Icarus. Icarus was like he and his dad were escaping from prison, and they had these wings, and they were flapping, and they could fly away. And his dad told him, don't fly where? Don't fly too high. And Icarus flew too high, and the wax on the feathers melted, and he fell to the ground. But he also told him, don't fly too low, or you're going to have a problem. The salt water that will hurt the wings of that we created, and you'll fall into the sea. And Icarus didn't listen to his dad because, you know, this is what teenagers do, and he flew too high. Okay, now, so here is a little passage I want to show you from the book. To return to the Icarus analogy, under the Obama administration, we began to fly too low. Like he was talking about the Bush administration, we're too high, we had too much hubris. Across multiple administrations, U.S. foreign policy and national security strategy has suffered from what we might derive from Morgenthal's essay, Strategic Narcissism, the tendency to view the world only in relation to the United States and to assume that the future use of events depends primarily on U.S. decisions or plans. The two mindsets that result from strategic narcissism, overconfidence and resignation, share the conceit of attributing outcomes almost exclusively to U.S. decisions and undervaluing the degree to which others influence the future. So again, it's overconfidence, and that was Bush's problem. And then there is this depression, resignation kind of something like, oh, we're not that whatever that you got out of the Obama administration. Obama went on what Republicans derisively call the apology tour, right? Apologizing all over the world for what the U.S. has done. The over-optimism that energized U.S. foreign policy under George W. Bush administration contributed to an underappreciation of the risks of such as the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The pessimism about the efficacy of U.S. engagement, on the other hand, abroad that influenced U.S. foreign policy under Barack Obama's administration led to an underappreciation of the risks of inaction. Now think about that. What was going on during the Obama administration, 2014, Maidan Revolution, Russia moving in, taking Crimea, right? What were the risks of inaction, of doing nothing at the time? And there were significant risks, it turned out, such as the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq in 2011, or the decision to forego military reprisals for the Assad regime's mass murder of Syrian civilians with chemical weapons in 2013. Okay, so it's the pessimism side that I want to look for. It's not Icarus flying too high to this, close to the sun. It's the Obama-Biden. Remember, Biden was Obama's vice president. They're on a very similar page, and they were flying too low to the ocean, and you'd have an equal and opposite problem. Now, if you look back historically, so there was this post, Facebook post says, lifeguard/football player Joe Biden got 5 draft deferments for asthma during Vietnam. And the PolitiFact, whatever, said that we rate this claim as mostly false, the Facebook claim. But Biden did receive, during Vietnam, just like Trump avoided the draft, Biden avoided the draft. Biden received 5 deferments, but they were granted because he was a student, with the last one granted in January 1968. Later, in April 1968, he underwent a medical exam and was then given a 1Y classification because of his asthma as a teenager. So he did get deferment after deferment after deferment, and then got medically excused for asthma. So, okay, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but there's more to the story potentially. Remember how the Osama bin Laden raid went down? And to his credit, Obama actually did execute the Osama bin Laden raid. But Vice President then, Joe Biden, confessed that he advised President Obama not to launch the mission that ultimately killed Osama bin Laden. He got to me. He said, "Joe, what do you think? Mr. President, my suggestion is we don't go." Now, Obama knew what was at stake. It wasn't just the lives of the brave warriors, but ultimately the presidency. Like, a failure here could have been catastrophic politically. But Joe Biden's knee-jerk reaction was, don't do this thing. And it seems like that's kind of the trend. Now, I'm building a case. I'm not even sure that this is right, but it feels right. But tell me what you think about this. Robert Gates thinks Joe Biden hasn't stopped being wrong for 40 years. Robert Gates was the Secretary of Defense. He was Secretary of Defense under Republicans and Democrats. Like, he's also very much a McMaster, like, I'm just about the security of the country. He says, I think he's been wrong. He's talking about Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates says of Vice President Joe Biden in his new book coming out this month. Okay, this was a while back. It's just that the way that Biden processes things, it's like, we don't want to do that. Okay, another example. Remember this, and I'm not going to show the guy falling off the plane as they were leaving Afghanistan, right? We saw the Air Force rolling out, and the Air Force didn't bungle anything. They were tasked with doing a Herculean event, but these guys are like hanging on to the airplane, and the plane's going to lift off, and these guys are going to fall. It was such a terrible look for the U.S. to be abandoning. It's what it looked like. Our allies, those that were with us in Afghanistan. Now, I know people are going to say, well, Trump started this, and I'm not trying to get into this. Joe Biden executed it. He didn't have to execute it. He didn't have to do it in order to beat the 20-year mark, which is what he was going for, it appears, as a political thing to say, we've completed this, or we've gotten out of this. And the public reacted in the way that I just described. Rightly or wrongly, they did. His impulse was to get away from this. Now, Trump's not much better. Trump seems to have a revulsion to being involved in international affairs and foreign policy as well. So I'm not trying to make points for Trump. When I showed you this, I showed you a Nikki Haley sign, not a Trump sign. I'm not trying to make points or political points for Trump at Biden's expense. I'm just trying to understand and interpret what's going on. Okay, and at the time, August 31st, 2021, we saw this White House statement. But I also know that the threat from terrorism continues its pernicious and evil nature. But it's changed, expanded to other countries. Our strategy has to change too. We will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. We just don't need to fight a ground war to do it. We have what's called over-the-horizon capabilities, which means we can strike terrorists and targets without American boots on the ground, or very few if needed. That's really not aligned with reality, and I think that's what's prompting Robert Gates' statement. You just can't, just because you have missiles doesn't mean you don't need humans to execute the work on the ground. If you're military, correct me if I'm wrong. You just tell me, put it in the comments below. Okay, so again, I'm not trying to smear him, I'm just trying to make sense of it. So Biden likes to do this "I'm standing with Ukraine" kind of thing, but he doesn't want to actually do the things that will get them over the goal line. While he wants to support and have the political rally and that sort of thing, he also simultaneously will do stuff like this. And it's somewhat maddening. Now, before you think that I'm just striking at Biden, I think fairly, right? Like what happened with the Republicans in the last 6, 7, 8 months was terrible. Listen to this question and this answer, and I think it's very fair.
Of the delay, Russia's military land forces have grown back to where they were before the invasion. The army's 15% larger, and they've reinforced the 20% of Ukrainian territory that they hold. These are all the words of the Supreme Allied Commander himself. Do you feel your party is responsible for those setbacks?
Many of them, yeah. We took too long. This issue was like a family reunion, if you will, with a lot of different points of view being expressed around the table. All the Democrats were for Ukraine. There's no question that the debate was in our family, on our side, and there was a lot of skepticism for a long time. But
okay, so McConnell manned up and took responsibility for what Republicans had done. I'm not trying to say Biden bad, Republicans good. That's not it at all. I am saying, let's set this aside. I think there's something fundamentally in Biden that is not of the hubris side, flying too high to the sun, but of the pessimistic side that's flying too low and is unwilling to do more. I could be wrong. I'm not even sure that my analysis is correct. I'm just trying to think through things. But if McMaster is right, and I think he might be, that explains why we're slow walking aid to Ukraine. Okay, tell me what you think in the comments below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.